Hi, David here, and welcome back to the channel, looking at the automatic writings of the early 20th century medium, James Padgett. In the last video, we looked at a message that Padgett received from his wife Helen, reassuring him that time they spent together in dream state was real, and not just the product of his imagination. In this video, we're going to look at another message from Helen, this time describing her experience of dying and passing to spirit. James received this message from Helen on December 8, 1914, just a few days after the last one we looked at. I am here, Helen. I am so very happy, as you are loving me very much tonight, and I can see that your thoughts are with me so much more than of late. Let me continue to feel that you love me. Now, Helen isn't just telling James to think of her more often because of the enjoyment she derives from seeing how much he loves her. It's also because his spending time thinking of her and being loving towards her helps Helen to connect with James and to communicate more fully. Helen goes on to describe what it was like for her to leave her physical form behind and pass to spirit. It's not clear from the message whether she does this in response to a question from James, but just to give a little bit of background, Helen had been ill for some time, but had not necessarily expected her illness to prove fatal. She tells us that when I realized that the time had come for me to go, I did not fear to do so, but calmly waited and thought that all my sufferings would soon end. And when my spirit left the body, I commenced to feel that I was rising out of it, and that I was going upward to the place that I had so often heard my father speak about. I had scarcely awakened to the fact that my spirit had left the body before your mother had me in her arms and was trying to tell me that I had nothing to fear, or cause me to feel that I was not with those who loved me. She was so beautiful that I hardly realized that it was she, and when I commenced to see that I was no longer in my body, I asked her not to leave me, but to take me with her to where she lived. She told me that I could not go there, but God had prepared a place for me to go to, and that she would accompany me and show me the truth of my future existence. I went with her, and she took me to a place that was very beautiful and filled with spirits who had recently passed over. She did not leave me for a long time, and when she did, your father came to me and said, I am Ned's father, and want to help you to realize that you are now in the spirit world, and must not let the thoughts of the earth keep you from getting in a condition to learn that all of us are only waiting for the love of God to help us to higher and better things. Your grandmother soon came to me and told me who she was, and was so beautiful and bright that I scarcely could look at her, for her face was all aglow with what seemed to me to be a heavenly light. And her voice was so sweet and musical that I thought she must be one of God's angels that I had read about in the Bible. She told me of the things that God had prepared for me, and that he wanted me to love him and believe that he loved me. This is all quite lovely and clearly all beyond her expectations. A key point for anyone to take reassurance from is that passing to spirit isn't something Helen has been left to do on her own. She has been met by family who help her to realize what has happened and to get her bearings, so to speak. It's interesting that Helen is met by her in-laws and one of her husband's grandmothers, rather than members of her own family. We're not told why this is, but there are various possibilities. It may be that these are the people Helen felt close to. It may be that these are the people best placed to help her in terms of their spiritual development and understanding. It's possible that the work expected of James Padgett in receiving these messages and Helen's role in it was already being contemplated and planned for. Anyway, Helen goes on to tell us what happened after those first welcomes. After a while, I commenced to think that I must be deceived in my sight and hearing, and was still on earth, and needed only my body again to know that I was still a mortal. Some time elapsed before I really became conscious that I was a spirit and was not on earth. For when I tried to talk to you, as I did, you would not listen to me and turned away from me as if you did not hear or see me. After a short time, your mother and father came to me again and tried to persuade me that I must not continue in my belief that I was still of the earth, and must believe that I was in the spirit life, and needed only the things of the spirit to make me more contented. So you see, I was very fortunate in having your dear parents and grandmother welcome me when I passed over. If they had not received me, I do not know to what condition of fear and distraction I might have been subjected. No spirit can learn the truth of the change unless in some way helped by others. This is interesting. I've seen many accounts of people passing to spirit, but taking time to accept it simply because they don't feel any difference within themselves. And often because they have no reference point in terms of what they expected death to be like. It is very common for recently deceased people to try to find their body and wonder if all they need to do is re-enter it somehow so as to carry on with their lives. It is not at all unusual for people to do this. Helen then goes on to describe more fully the initial process of leaving the body. She has already told us that she felt as though she were rising upwards. When I commenced to leave the body, I felt that something unusual was happening, but I was not afraid. As I always in life dreaded death, as you know, the strange thing to me was that I did not look upon death as dying. It was only a pleasant, dreamy feeling. I had been suffering pain, but I thought that I was getting well, and that the feeling of relief that came over me was the result of my getting better. As my spirit arose, I thought only of my condition and how soon I would be able to return home and see my friends. No other thoughts came to me, not even my love for God, or the fact that I was not in condition, as regards my soul, to meet my Maker, as I had been taught. There was absolutely no fear of what might happen to me, or that I would soon be called upon to account for the sins that I had committed. Many, many people in this world fear death. Some even expend huge resources to try and avoid it, an exercise in futility, if ever there was one. But we fear the unknown, of course. It's interesting that Helen, even as someone brought up as a Christian, has had that same fear of death during her earthly life. Yet, during the process of dying, she is conscious of no sense of fear whatsoever. All she is aware of, as she puts it, is a pleasant, dreamy feeling, followed by a sense of relief. Helen goes on to say that just before my spirit left my body, I was unconscious, but just as soon as the separation commenced, I became fully conscious and knew everything that took place, and did not feel as if I were at all in danger or needed the help of anyone. I did not stay with my body at all, but when I commenced to leave it, I continued to rise, as I have told you, until your mother met me. So you see, death, which I so much feared, was not such a dreadful thing to experience after all. When you come over, I will be there to receive you and love you so much that you will never have to go through the period of doubt that I did. Your father is also waiting to receive you, and in fact all your spirit band have agreed that when you come, you will have nothing to fear for want of help and love. You must let me stop now, for I am tired. Your own true and loving Helen. You'll often hear it said in spiritualist and other churches, and in traditions other than Christianity, that death is nothing. But it is still helpful to read a detailed description of exactly what people in spirit mean by that. Some of the things Helen says in her message resonates with my own experience, which might seem a strange thing to say, given that I'm clearly still here in a physical form, talking to you on a camera. To explain, within spiritualism, there is a practice known as astral travel, where you consciously travel outside your body, but remain connected to it. In spiritualism, it is sometimes said that you remain connected by a silver cord, something that gets a mention in the Old Testament, in Ecclesiastes 12.6-7. In shamanic traditions, astral travel is more often referred to as journeying. Early on in my development, this would be around Easter 2001, my guides showed me what it is like to leave the body. Early one morning, I was still half asleep, but suddenly became aware of two figures standing at the foot of my bed. And the next thing I knew, I felt myself rising out of my body without any sense of fear or apprehension whatsoever. I later used a description of this event in my PhD thesis and later in the published version. So at the risk of being accused of blowing my own trumpet, I'm just going to quote what I wrote at the time about this experience. It's quite fun going back to it again. I say in the book that one of the first adult experiences that formed part of my awakening, for want of a better word, was waking up early one bright morning. I was living in Cairo at the time, so lots of sunshine, and being aware of two figures standing at the bottom of my bed, and of the room being suffused with a bright white light. The two people, the walls, furniture, everything was shining, is the best way I can put it. Then, very gradually, comfortably, and without any effort on my part, I felt myself rising or being lifted out of my body, feet first, until I was entirely free of it, just floating upwards until I was out of it. Once I realized I was out of my body, I was like Bambi, bouncing around just for the sheer joy of it and reveling in that sense of freedom, passing through walls, up on the roof of the building, you name it. And everything was shining, like I could see directly the energy that all physical matter is made from. I could actually see the dynamic nature of physical objects. I was having great fun, but very quickly over and very gently back in my body again, awake and back to normal, but still aware of the two people in my bedroom, even though not able to see them objectively anymore, because back looking with the physical eyes again. Once I was over a momentary flash of disappointment at being encased in flesh once again, I was left with an amazing sense of excitement and sheer joy at being alive. So you can see from this how I can completely identify with what Helen Padgett tells us about the experience of leaving the body behind, and how comfortable and free of any sense of fear it is, how entirely natural it feels. Obviously, in her case, it was happening because that was her time to leave the body behind for good, with no continuing connection to it. But the experience of exiting the body is the same, whether you're leaving it for the purpose of a temporary journey or a permanent one. When people in spirit tell us that the process of dying is nothing, and nothing to be feared, they mean us to take that quite literally, and they are being entirely honest with us in saying it. For the next video, we're going to look at another message from Helen, delivered just the very next evening after the one we've just looked at. It's December 1914. James Padgett has been doing this writing for about 6 months now. He's still trying to get his head around it, full of questions about it, decide if it's something he can trust in, if it's something he can believe in and take at face value, wondering how it works, and so on. So Helen comes forward with a message explaining, as best she can, the technical aspects of how this kind of automatic writing works. So I hope you'll join me for that. In the meantime, if you've enjoyed this video, like it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, as it does help to introduce it to others who might be interested. And if you would like to be alerted to videos as they're uploaded, click the little bell icon. In the meantime, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Take care.